And everything that is so awesome about Revolution Radio is right here for the taking. But, you know, Revolution Radio's hosts keep it hopping and rocking year-round, 24/7. And I bet you have a favorite host, or maybe you got many favorite hosts, right? And I'm also betting you didn't catch every show. So now you can order the Season 2013 podcast disc. It's all of your favorite host shows of each show, depending on who the host is, from 2013. For now, $30 per host, which means that you get the podcast of every broadcast in 2013 that your favorite host did, starting in February, actually, this year. And not only do you help fund the station by picking these up, but you help fund your favorite host's work, because I split the proceeds of the sale with the host, less the shipping, of course. So this is just $30, and you get a data DVD that has every podcast for the entire year. Whose podcast are you learning? Well, all you have to do is visit freedomslips.com/season2013.htm. There's a little box. You type in your favorite host name and click pay. And when you're done, you will receive your podcast disc in 7 to 21 days, depending on the demand. Hey, man, I'm just one guy, right? Anyway, and as an added bonus, man, if you order more than 5 hosts season DVDs, I'm going to give you a free 1-year access to our daily archives. So, man, don't miss out. It's all here. It's all here. You can help us. You can help the station, help fund the station, and the host get half of it, which means you get to help fund your favorite host. I mean, how could it be better? There's no other station out here that does that. So thank you very much. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, man. You're listening to the Nighthawk, and I'm telling you what, man, this is where information never, ever sleeps, including me. Revolution Radio.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Researcher on a mission with Dr. J.N. Elias.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to Researchers on a Mission Radio. I'm your host, Dr. J. Co-hosting with me straight from the UK is, of course, Johnny Webb. And from the Midwest is Laura Lee Solomon. And before we go on today, I'm going to give you all the opportunity for hour one. Instead of us bringing you a guest, we are the guests. So all you listeners out there are more than welcome to call in and tell us whatever you want. Let me give you the call-in number. On the East Coast, 347-688-2902. Again, 347-688-2902. Direct line on the West Coast, 818-923-1713. Again, 818-923-1713. One more time, 347-688-2902 or 818-923-1713. 1713. This is only for hour 1. Hour 2, we have a special treat for you. A new experiencer / abductee is going to come forward and talk about his experiences. At the end of the show, you're going to hear from the most famous abductee of all time, Travis Walton. But before we get into any of that, let's talk about Revolution Radio. This is the world's largest listener-supported station, which means you, the listener, keep us running. It's you, the listener, that keeps us out of corporate hands and gives us an opportunity to provide you with the truth that you are not going to find on CNN or Fox News or anywhere else. You got to go to freedomslips.com and hit the support button now. And on top of supporting us, there are benefits too. For instance, if you donate $5 per month, you will get access to all our archives. If you donate $30, and you mention this when you're donating in the donation box, you say which offer you want. For $30, you will receive a DVD of an entire year's worth of a selected show. Every single show for you to do whatever you want with. Upload them into your iPod, take it with you to your car, whatever you want to do with them. And the biggest gift of them all, for $100, not only will you be helping the station immensely, you will be getting the mother of all seed packs. 54 varieties, 35,000 plus seeds, all non-GMO, good for up to 25 years, and so much more included in that, aside from the seeds, including a Boy Scout manual, survival kit. There's so much information. You have to go to freedomslips.com to read it for yourself. Now, as I said, this is Researchers on a Mission Radio. I want to give you a few more announcements before we jump into some amazing UFO news. Also, one of our producers sadly could not make it today, David Paul. He is he's an artist, and he has a Kickstarter campaign for this copper wire sculpture, which is really beautiful, what I've seen, the computer design. You could see it yourself. It's called Beginnings, and there's different tiers of what you get if he reaches this level, starting with small signed prints to limited edition lithographs, numbered and signed, and all of the above. Everything can be found there. Also, some events coming up. On November 1st, there's the Conscious Life Seminar, put on by Conscious Life Expo, which is going to be Danny and Brinkley talking to the other side. The following week in Arizona is the Starfire Summit. This is going to be Travis Walton's 39-year anniversary of his taking, and there's going to be some top guests, and you're going to hear all about that when he comes on. The week after that, in Laughlin, Nevada, is Starworks USA. It's an event put on by Paula Harris. It's about consciousness, UFOs, and so much more. Grant Cameron, Stephen Bassett, Jaime Maussan, they're all going to be there, plus so many more people. Go to starworksusa.com for all that. And then, of course, November 22nd, the week after that. So literally every week starting next week, you have something to do. And in Los Angeles, Cyril would be a screening of Top Priority, which is the true story of BJ and Julia Davis. And that's where I'm going to start today. And the reason why I'm going to start with BJ and Julia Davis, if you haven't heard that name or those names, that's okay. Neither have I. I'll give you the brief summary about them. Basically what happened was Julia Davis came here and joined the Homeland Security. Her husband was a stuntman. He had been in over 42 movies and was the stuntman for some of the top actors that you can imagine. Everybody, Robert De Niro, Arnold Schwarzenegger, so many people. When she was, one of her tasks was looking over the no-fly zone, or not no-fly zone, the no-fly list, and checking people who are coming into this country. And she realized that through one specific embassy, these applications for visas were just really incomplete, and people who were on the terror watch list were being admitted into this country. And this was shoveled under the rug. This was just hid. So all of a sudden, she goes and talks to her superiors about it. And what do? They fire her. Then they harass her. Then they raid her. Then they arrest her and her husband. And there's even a link with her and Brittany Murphy's death. That we'll find out later, because Brittany Murphy's father actually appears in that film, Top Priority. But this just goes to show what the government will do to cover things up. Why did I bring this up when we're talking about UFOs? Because if they can cover up something like this, which thank God her husband's a filmmaker or being a stuntman, knows everybody in Hollywood, they were able to provide us proof of this. But Let's switch to UFOs for a second. I'm going to pitch this both to you, Johnny, and you, Laura. Did you see recently on CBS the other day, they actually showed a space drone landing? Wait a minute. We were not told there were space drones, and all of a sudden there's space drones. And according to the space drone it showed in night vision, it said on CBS World News that for over 2 years, this craft was hovering in space, circling the Earth for 2 straight years before it landed here on Earth. Now, I ask you this. Was it armed? I would think yes. Why wouldn't it be armed? If it was just there to spy, what are our spy satellites for? Laura, Johnny, what do you think about that?
What do I think about that? My gosh, that is a piece of news. But I do recall reading something about them having some kind of a device that they were going to hang up in orbit. It was some time ago. So 2 years makes sense. It's some piece of news I may have encountered in passing and didn't pay much attention to it. Was it armed? The chances are excellent that it was. It may be something that was used to bother people's satellites.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Laura, because that is exactly what someone else said. That someone else said if it wasn't armed to fight off ETs that are possibly engaging in space wars, which a lot of people have come forward to say that's what's been happening, but it was intently hovering up there or orbiting, not orbiting in a stationary orbit like our satellites, but have the ability to traverse, to catch up with a certain satellite, to ruin other countries' satellites, to ruin their ability to communicate and to spy the way that we do. But here's the scary thought. Is months ago, Johnny Webb, right here, who's on the air with us from the UK, for all you listeners out there, showed me pictures of space drones, and I was blown away. I was like, wait a minute. There was a military space program that was unarmed or unmanned drones that were being flown into space, and these were shocking pictures. But then all of a sudden, for me to see it on CBS, I was blown away. I mean, this takes away the fact of conspiracy. That's no more conspiracy. When something shows up on mainstream news, yes, there's propaganda involved, but this confirms it. They actually showed this thing landing. Johnny, what were you about to say?
Well, I was going to say how similar it looks to the space shuttle and the size of it, and the uniforms, or should we say the sort of biosuits that the guys that went up to it were wearing. You know, what is it full of? You know, radiation, or is it carrying something from somewhere else here? Or, you know, it concerns me that we're not told anything. We're shown it. It was on the BBC. It was on ITN News here, but we're given the same information that you're given. Very little, you know. It's just that it's been out there for 2 years monitoring. Does that make you feel safe that there's, you know, a mini space shuttle up there monitoring? What is it monitoring? And because we have so little information, it's quite strange. I can only assume it's part of DARPA, the Department of Advanced Research Program Agency, which is part of Area 51. But again, I'd be speculating because there's such little information. But, you know, as you can see, as you said yourself, even on CNN and NBC, it's on the major key rate, you know, TV stations. They're showing it to us, but they're certainly not saying anything about it. Back to you, John.
Yeah, well, this was obviously for me when I first saw these pictures of these space drones that you actually introduced to me. I never even once thought about it. I figured that they were having manned craft going up there. It never occurred to me that even though we were using drones to drop bombs in Iraq and Pakistan and Afghanistan and everywhere else across this world, as a matter of fact, 36,000 drones are crisscrossing the United States skies as we speak, picking up data on us every single day. But it never once, for some reason, it didn't occur to me that they could use military drones that have a higher acceleration, higher power to go up there. But you brought up a very good point.
John, there is something I would like to point out, and that is our whole satellite program. Not satellites, but the probes we've sent out. Those are all a form of drone. We send it out to Jupiter or Saturn and have a flyby and look at the moons and take pictures. all on computer control.
That's right, and you're right. I should have picked that up on that sooner. We've been doing that since the late 50s, or early 60s. You're absolutely right. Well before we sent a man in space, we were sending drones into space. But now, when Johnny said, and this, I saw the same exact video where it showed people in biosuits or radiation suits going up to this craft that just landed. It makes you want to think, well, clearly it's not running off the same fuel that was launching the traditional space shuttle or the Apollo missions. This had to have been something else.
Did you notice, John, that in the center of it, there was illuminating these 3 center points that were all very unique, but they had their own sort of high level of high heat look in the ultraviolet light they were showing of the heat sensors of it. And I thought, what, those 3 things there in the hull of it, But again, we're speculating. I don't know.
That's all we can do, but what we have as evidence is the footage that was released, and it wasn't leaked on YouTube by a white hat that was involved in the program. Clearly, the military decided to give it out to the people and show the world, and there was no spin, nothing. Oh, here comes the landing of this military space drone that's been, circling.
How long did they say that thing was up there?
Over 2 years. Over 2 years. And it obviously was not stationary, which means it wouldn't need power, such as a satellite. It had the ability to travel from one satellite to another, so it had the ability to propel itself, to decelerate, to do all that, which means there was definitely a power source. And of course, we were controlling it down here by computer. But let me pitch this to you. Aside from messing with other people's satellites, which seems to be the consensus that I've heard from several people, a lot of people have been talking about Star Wars, real Star Wars going on. A lot of ETs have been visiting us. That's a fact. We've been going back to history. They've been influencing us in one way or another. But Timothy Good, when we had him on the show right here at Revolution Radio, he stated that for centuries, if not millennia, that there are different factions of extraterrestrials that are fighting amongst each other right here on Earth. They are having a covert war without us really knowing about it. Now, Star Wars defense system initiated by President Ronald Reagan under the guise of taking out Soviet missiles, I think was put out there more so we could fight off enemies. And this goes, another thing I'm going to bring up too. There was a program, which the name eludes me now, a specific program that the entire thing was just so we could nuke alien bases here on Earth, such as Dulce or other bases underground where ETs inhabit. Just an entire program where military officers, Navy officials, high-ranking, with crypto clearances or Majestic, which is the highest, or Cosmic Top Secret, their whole sole program and their whole sole mission was to monitor these nukes that were ready at a minute's notice to destroy underground bases. Do you think it's possible that these space drones, because this was just one that landed, my presumption is there's several more up there, and these things are probably not just circling Earth, but probably going a little further deeper, maybe circling the moon, maybe looking at the bases on there. Do you think that they're armed? Because if they're propelled by something, my guess is they would be propelled by either some technology that we're not aware of, or because they were wearing biohazard / radiation suits when they came up to this craft after it landed. Maybe that this thing is nuclear powered, and maybe it actually has nuclear weapons on board. Do you think it's possible?
Well, it's funny, when I looked at the back of the craft, where, on the space shuttle, you've got those 3 big boost, sort of like oval, when they like bell housings, the rocket sort of mouths. And when you look at the back of that, it was almost flimsical, it was quite sort of, it had a couple of bell mouths, but they wasn't showing anything sort of as an engine in the background. And did you notice the sound of it on its own propulsion as it was coming in as well? It was sort of very unique in the sound, really.
It was. It absolutely was. It did not sound like our typical drones. It definitely did not sound like an internal combustible engine. It was too small to be of anything of that kind. To be there for 2 years and have the ability to make its own reentry, to take off on its own. Obviously, there wasn't a rocket that took it up that we don't know of. If there was, it was a very covert one.
It said it was an Atlas.
An Atlas brought it up. See, that was one thing I was not aware of. But point being,
I think it went up in the Ariane in in sort of Africa, off the coast of Africa, the Ariane rocket system, which is, I think, a European Space Agency. But where America has now subsidized out a lot of its sort of home produce that it used to use as NASA, we've got rockets being built all over the world and being sent up in the name of America, but they're actually built and manufactured all over the world. And I think that this particular one, it was mentioned that it was a secret program. It had a big, massive cone on the front of it as it went up with the 3 Ariane rockets underneath it. So I do remember it being mentioned about 2 years ago, but we never saw what it looked like because it was in that big cone. And it reminded me of the Moonraker movie, the James Bond, where, a few years before the space shuttle program even got released to the public, they were telling you and showing you that there was a mixture of not just Americans, but internationals like Russia and Britain and probably other countries.
That was actually a really scary movie in the sense that several years before we even had the space shuttle, in that movie was a spitting image of the space shuttle. And not just the space shuttle, what took it up, the giant fuel tank
Booster
along
rockets.
with the 2 booster rockets. I mean, come on. Did they have some sort of inside knowledge 7 years before the first official, or was the movie 75, 77? Point being, it was 5 to 7 years before we even were released the space shuttle. It's being used in a film. So obviously someone there had some inside knowledge or knew what was going on or was inspired by something. I really don't know, but it was a really, when I saw that, chills went up my spine. But that just goes to show the capability of what the government can hide from us without us knowing about it. And that's a very scary thought. Now let's go back to the ET threat. Do you think that these space drones are out there possibly protecting us? Or do you think because we've broken treaties with them where we said we would get rid of our nukes and we're still, certain countries are still testing them, other countries are trying to reach that nuclear level?
Testing them. Our nation uses them in combat.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're the only nation to this date that has still ever really used them in combat. And that's a scary thought. We're trying to tell the world, stop your nuclear program, yet we keep a stockpile of nuclear weapons, and we're the only people to have killed people with nuclear weapons, not once, but twice.
Well, the United States and Israel.
Yes. And I think Israel is the only reason they have nuclear weapons is simply because the United States just gave them to them so they could launch themselves, or so we could have a launching point to launch anywhere in that area. Now, here's another thing. I'm going to divert attention from this because this relates to nuclear weapons. Have you heard the rumors lately that I don't remember his name, Kim Jong-il?
Kim Jong-un. Yeah.
Un is the young one. Il is the one that died. Kim Jong-un is the young one. He's been missing. No one's seen him. He missed a very, like the most major North Korean ceremony or holiday. He wasn't there. He was there was a state dinner. Everybody, the generals, his chief advisors were there. He wasn't there. The last video of him from about 2 months ago, 6 weeks to 8 weeks ago, showed him limping. What do you think happened? Do you think someone maybe killed him and they're covering it up? Do you think maybe he died? Or do you think, what's going on with that? What do you guys think about that? Because he was getting close to getting nuclear weapons, and that's not a joke. And he was provoking South Korea into a war. And I wouldn't be surprised if he got the Moscow flu, which you know what the Moscow flu is, right? Where you just croak without knowing, or you get cancer with no, without justification.
Well, although that kind of thing has happened, that he might have left the area to get medical treatment not available in Korea makes sense.
I would think so. That would definitely make sense. But I at the same time, I think they would have spun it a little better. Or if he did leave the country to get help, wouldn't he have flown back in his private jet in time for the national holiday, or to have such a big thing where it was at the palace where everybody was around, including his uncle and everybody around him but him? I mean, yes, even if he's sick in bed, I wouldn't imagine that they wouldn't show him with his family or something, just to give the country a reason to have sympathy for him, rather than just him just disappearing and having no ifs, ands, or buts of where he is. No, it's just at this point all we can do is speculate. But at some point, that is kind of fun, speculating on what can happen. But again, that was a country that we were always fearing. Going back to the Korean War, it was never really ended. If you've seen this National Geographic special on Inside North Korea, they want to kill us. Their children are raised with these anti-America songs that they want to destroy us. I remember watching, it was, again, the National Geographic special, and she's in there. She came in there hidden with this Cambodian doctor, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was a Chinese doctor, but somebody who was going to do 1,000 cataract surgeries in a week's time, which was pretty much a record. And all these people were so scared because the moment they could see, the first thing they did was go up to a picture of Kim Jong-un, or actually it was Kim Jong-il, prior to him passing away. And they were thanking him, not the doctor, not the country, not God, not anything else, but they were thanking him. They were thanking their great leader, as they call him, their great leader. Thank you so much, great leader. My vision is back. Oh, thank you. Almost as if it's a godlike status. But again, do you think it's possible that either A, he's seeking treatment, like you said, Laura, or B, is he really maybe wiped off and they're trying to scramble their thoughts because his heirs are too young to lead the country? What are they going to put, a 6-year-old as an emperor?
I have no idea.
Johnny, what's your take?
Oh, well, it's mad because there's so many, great topics, isn't there, out there of UFOs and studies. And, when it comes to it, it's all speculation until they land on the doorstep and, we all see it for what it really is. But I think what we're really seeing is the consciousness shifting, the mind shift to actually get us into it. I always remember someone interviewing the guy that made that movie about the Mayans. What's his name now? I forgot his name, but he's a famous Mel Gibson. And when they were asking him about the Mayan movie that he'd made in Mexico, the question was that why is it that all the people on the beach in that day were looking at these big Spanish Armada ships but couldn't see them? And he was explaining that because they'd never conceived it in their minds, even though it was there, they couldn't see it. And so he said that they had to come right up close onto shore before they realized that they were even there, and this was like explained that. So in the concept of these things, in the concept of, non-material craft, thought craft rather than physical craft, it's hard for people to grasp in a concept. So I think we're seeing it with a lot of movies, a lot of TV media is pushing us in that direction. It's showing us continually this medium. Even our advertising, they don't even use real people to sit on a sofa or on a bed anymore in an advert. They're using alien pigmentations, And I think,
I'm really glad you brought up consciousness. I know, Laura, you've been on this. We've had some guests, and this brings up to our break. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back. And remember, if you want to join us for the next 30 minutes before we bring our experiencers for hour 2, by all means, do call us at 347-688-2902. Hang by for a couple minutes, and we'll be right back.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
You have a choice whether to be a madman or a bold genius. What's the difference? A madman is somebody who does the same action over and over and over for an unknown destiny. A bold genius is somebody who does the same action over and over and over again for a known destiny. That is why fortune always favors the bold. True titans of our times and of the past, who are bent on making most of their opportunities in life, are too busy to bother with luck. Luck is the good fortune you determine for yourself. So find the strength, have the knowledge, summon up the courage to accomplish and see that your dreams are limitless. Your dreams are the fabric that binds all of us together. Rise up like fire. Ascend the ladder of your dreams. We choose to rise, not fall. We choose to live, not die. Shift to your triumph. Today, you shift to your triumph and carry your dreams forward until your life is a capital of triumph. I believe in you, and I know you can do whatever you want. You have an unlimited potential. This moment, this second, your life is an Olympian sunrise. This is your time.
This is your time. Right here at revolutionradio.com. To rise up and make the difference. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Listener supported 100%.
I gotta know the truth, Charlie.
This is Stu Webb, federal whistleblower, the new host of Veterans Today Radio News Reports, Monday right here on Revolution Radio. My guests are writers and contributors to veteranstoday.com, the #1 alternative media magazine in the world and the true voice of the world's clandestine community. We will be discussing recent articles that deal with government corruption, politics, military, Illuminati, and world events that affect your lives and what you can do to change the direction of America. So tune in to the Veterans Today Radio News Reports every Monday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Studio B here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Thank you.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping up cameras in your face?
And those root weevils right here.
Enjoy your
extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another?
Extra big-ass fries.
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
trouble.
Come
on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Revolution Radio. listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back to Revolution Radio. This is the world's largest listener-supported station, and if you want the truth, which you're not going to get on CNN, Fox News, or anywhere else, you are going to get it here. And the reason is because we are out of corporate hands and 100% listener-supported, which means you, the listener, is what's keeping the radio waves going. So therefore, go to freedomslips.com and hit the support button now. And you'll also get incentives for not only helping the station, you'll get something out of it too, depending on what you donate. For $5 per month, you'll be getting access to all the shows in the archives, going back as far as they were from their inception. For $30 donation, make sure you say this in the donation box through PayPal. You are not only supporting the station, you will also be getting a year's worth of on DVD of an entire show. Pick the show you want, and you'll get it to do whatever you want with them. Upload them to your iPod, listen to them to your car, do whatever you want with them. The Grandmaster plan, the Grandmaster, what I call bonus, for $100, not only will you be helping the station immensely, you will be getting the mother of all seed packs. 54 varieties, 35,000 plus seeds, good for up to 25 years, non-GMO, and so much more, such as a Boy Scout manual, survival kit, so many things to list that I actually have to send you to the website, freedomslips.com, and just look for the seed pack offer. And again, be sure when you hit the support button, you make sure you notate in there, if you're donating any of those tiers, that's what you specify you would like in return. But again, any donation helps. If you skip your coffee for a day and support the station, you're helping us immensely. There are hundreds of thousands of you out there. If each of you sent a dime, this station would be running on for years. Now, as I said, this is Researchers on a Mission Radio. Two co-hosts with me, of course, there's Laura Lee Solomon from Texas, and all the way across the pond in the UK is Johnny Webb. We invite you, the listeners, to call us for the next 20 minutes. Hour 2, we're going to be speaking to two experiencers, one of them being the most famous of all time. He's near at the end of the show. That's Travis Walton. The other one is going to be a new one named Jay Lucas. But until then, it's open game, and we have 3 great things we're talking about. One, we were speaking about Kim Jong-un. Where his disappearance? I mean, was he taken by aliens? Was he assassinated? Did he secretly die? Is he seeking treatment? It just, to me, it doesn't make sense what's going on, because he's missed so many important things where his face needed to be shown on TV so he could prove to people that he's still in charge and the country's still better than the world, and America's still going to die, and they're still firing their missiles next to South Korea. And all this. So that's a very good thing. And Johnny also brought up consciousness, which I'd love to talk about too in a minute, because consciousness, it seems to me a lot of people are awakening and realizing that might be the missing link. But before we even go to those, let's talk about something even more important. Laura brought up a very good point to me during the break. We had a chance to briefly speak. Laura, go ahead and tell me what you told me when we bring microorganisms into space.
Well, you were talking about the biotainer or radiation suits, and that kind of rang a bell with me, and I started looking up stuff. It seems that microorganisms, I've heard it said that when they are kept in space for a time, when they're brought back, they're much more virulent. What I found was an article in Microbiology and Molecular Biology Reviews for the American Society for Microbiology, and it talks about the responses of microorganisms to factors in space. And they are talking here that the microorganisms grow much more. Much larger. They enjoy an enhanced reproductive cycle, and as well, they do so in the presence of what are normally antibiotics that would exterminate them, or at least inhibit the growth. Inhibiting the growth being the same thing over time. So the only thing that is really deleterious to them in space is the UV radiation. And if they can have the microorganisms packed in dust, say, soil or clay or meteorite powder, they were saying, this shelters them from the UV radiation. They thought this was a likely route of transfer of microorganisms for the theory of panspermia, life going from world to world packed inside of meteorites, as it were. But the whole idea of them being more vigorous when they have been kept in space, as long as they're shielded from UV radiation, is a real dangerous one. It is.
It is definitely something for us to fear, because now with this Ebola outbreak and the fact that they went from not even hiding that the military space program, maybe it's not a coincidence that this Ebola is coming out. And what I've heard too was, I'm sure several listeners out there know about this, that AIDS was created by the Navy in the 50s or 60s to control the population, specifically in Africa and then throughout the world. The problem is AIDS takes too long, where Ebola liquefies your organs, and in a matter of weeks you are literally coughing up your lungs, your liquid, your stomach. Your body internally turns to applesauce. What if the space drones were going up there to take a virus and make it worse or stronger, or maybe to create something? Or what if the Georgia Guidestones now say 2014 on them, and now
I think that's been removed.
Has it been removed? I did see a video where something was removed.
The little 2014. Yeah.
Sorry, Laura.
I wonder who put that on there to begin with.
I'm not sure, but I heard it was a wizard that went back and took off the cornerstone sort of square cube mountain that had certain figures and numbers, and one of it was 2014 on the side of it. But there were other numbers and letters in it. But what we saw was in a video, they with the sheriff, I think, at hand, so nobody was actually being arrested or anything. They were showing this stone being smashed on all its corners and all the faces being removed and certain parts of it being distributed. But I did read that was some symbolic or some sacrificial type, or not sacrificial, but ritual type ceremony. So I'm not quite sure about it.
A recent poll said that 90% of Americans do not fear Ebola, yet if you turn on the news, it's just Ebola, Ebola, Ebola. Even today, they found another case in New York. Another person who just came back from Africa, another physician, has Ebola or symptoms of Ebola, and probably might likely have it. Now, this is why I think it was brought here on purpose. In the past, whenever there's been some sort of outbreak of some crazy disease, the CDC would send a team and quarantine that person wherever they were and deal with them there and then come back. In this particular case, rather than sending CDC officials out there to the two specific physicians that contracted Ebola when they were helping the West Africans in Liberia, why did they bring them back? They basically brought the probably most dangerous virus that we can imagine around today, and they put it on American soil. They could have easily quarantined them there and healed them there before bringing them back, or if they couldn't be healed, at least give them proper care until they passed, if that was the only solution. But instead they brought it back here. And now there are cases popping up everywhere. What do you guys think about that? Same topic
there, John. I did see that there was photographs going around on the Facebook that were showing ground control staff not wearing any protection whatsoever on the same vehicle that, same aircraft they were bringing back this Ebola. So I found that quite sort of disturbing.
Oh, yeah, the clipboard man.
Exactly, yeah.
And the rationale for that was he was around, just doing the quality control type of stuff and making sure everybody followed protocol. And he wasn't wearing a suit so he could see. And besides, he wasn't coming into any direct patient contact. And I thought that was pretty funny because I work in healthcare quality myself. But
so did alarm bells ring for you then, Laura?
I could see us all in the role of clipboard man. I mean, our department goes scouting through the hospital, clipboards in hand, and they descend on various departments and inquire into their procedures by observation. You know, just checking off what they're doing and how they're doing it. Routinely. So that made a lot of sense to me, and I did think that he was. They could, if it was a photo op, they could have done it without him. But somebody just caught that picture.
Now, I heard a while back that right before this Ebola crisis started, that this company was patenting an Ebola vaccine. Do you think it coincides perfectly? I mean, if this is the case, that they have a patented medicine for it or patented vaccine for it, and then just unleash it. Maybe that clipboard man actually had the vaccine and was immune to it. I don't know, but it's a really scary thought. And this actually reminds me of a really interesting story. I think I picked this off an Ancient Aliens episode when they were talking about the Black Plague. People at the times in the Dark Ages when this was going around, they said at the end of the cities they would see these people that looked like the Grim Reaper. They were wearing black robes with black hoods, and they were carrying these things. They were like they described them as sickles, but they didn't quite have a blade. And as they would move these giant wands per se, I mean sticks, several foot long sticks, they were spraying mists, and they were spraying them at the edges of the cities, almost as if to contain or to make sure that no one crossed in and out of that area without being infected. And the speculation was that the ETs did not like the way the humans were doing what they were doing to each other. And as you know, Bob Lazar has always stated that the ETs have made 63 external corrections to us. And maybe this was a time where they wanted to eliminate a large population, because 2/3 of Europe was eliminated during this crisis. As a matter of fact, even the Emperor of Rome, Caligula, at the time, I think was.
No, that wasn't Caligula.
One of them, one of the emperors got it, contracted it, and actually was one of the few survivors, which I thought was really rare considering how deadly and how fast that disease went. But it just came and went, and that was a really, really scary scary thought, and I can never understand why that happened. But nonetheless, this going back to Ebola. Do you think this has to be tying this with the ETs? Are ETs running the world, as some people say? Are there reptilians in charge of the presidency, the Bilderbergers? And if so, are they the ones that the Georgia Guidestones were created and starting to be implemented with these train cars with shackles? I heard there's now 143,000 train cars. As a matter of fact, Paul Hellyer, when we had him on a couple months ago, he actually brought that up, and he brought that very thought up recently when I spoke to him again, and in his new book, Money Mafia. And that's a scary thought. What's going to happen to us? There's no more middle class. They are wiping us clean. It's the lower class and the upper class. The middle class is being squeezed. I was just at a mechanic today that had been there since 1963, and he's closing his doors next week. That's pretty sad. Why is he closing his doors? Because the taxes have gone up to an incredible rate, and he just can't afford it. It's not so much that his business has gone down. It's just that he can't afford to pay the state and the federal government the way he used to. And so clearly there's something going on, especially when Bush gave the tax cuts to the super rich. And that never made sense to me. Okay, yes, they employ thousands of people, but why give them the incentive? Why give them more breaks? Why not just have a flat tax rate for everybody? But again, that's going back to my original statement. Do you think that Ebola is here because under the directives of the ETs saying that we're overpopulated, we're destroying the planet, we need to eliminate a good majority of us down to 500 million to be a sustainable population? Do you think that's the case, or what's going on?
My thought is that unless the consciousness of people changes and a message is given to us in an enlightened and productive way that we accept there is a population issue and that we choose to limit our population and limit our population growth, then they are wasting their time, because as fast as people die, we can make more.
That's right. That is absolutely right. And especially in third world countries, they don't have 2 kids or 3 kids or even 1 child. They have 8, 10. And the reason being is because you don't expect all of them to survive. And that's just the way history goes. Several families, if you look in throughout the centuries, they would have a large amount of children because it was just expected that a couple of them would not make it. And so therefore they wanted to have their chances that their family would continue to survive. So nonetheless, it's really scary what's going on in this world. And it's really scary that the people are not necessarily paying attention or being fearful. When I heard that 90% of Americans are not fearing Ebola, that shocked me. I'm not around anybody who has it. Don't get me wrong.
I don't think fear is necessarily a good response.
That's true.
But I think there's a good case to be made for anger at the way it's been handled.
I agree. You're absolutely right. We should be angry, not fearful, because this is why the media is pumping us full of Ebola this, Ebola that.
We have elections coming up. And this whole fear and we need the people who are experienced in government to keep us safe. That is crap. We need to get rid of every single guy who is incumbent in office who comes up for election this year. Vote them out.
Vote them out. Start fresh. That would be my best bet, and that's what I've always wanted to do. But how can we? How can we convince an entire nation to vote out every senator, every congressman, every governor, the president, and start
Ventura.
fresh?
He managed to do it, didn't he? And he's quite an outspoken person. I wouldn't say that he's staunch, Republican. He's open-minded. He's got a consciousness, a conscience, should I say, and his consciousness, But so he's open-minded. He puts a lot of these shows on. It just needs other politicians or members of the society that are unheard of. You don't see their name in public. That's why they put puppets in front, so they don't have to be seen. But I do believe that their children, their grandchildren, these people are conscious, and I think that it will come from them. It's not us having to fight the 1%. The 1% will dissolve from its own self. Its own children will become conscious of world values, of conscious values, of the spirit, of the heart, of love,
I hope so, because I hope they see what their parents are doing in harmful ways and realize that that's not right. I hope that another theory that I've heard is that to keep in the royal bloodlines, which some say go to the ET bloodlines, that they they marry within each other. They never marry.
Yes, they're tragically inbred and extremely thick on account of that.
And because of the inbreeding, they eliminate that part of their conscience that has sympathy or empathy, and therefore they can be sociopaths and psychopaths without ever feeling remorse for lying or killing or doing anything. And I fear that may have been a downfall or a problem because of the inbreeding. And that was an interesting theory I heard. And it would make sense because I could never understand how these people in power would do such things to kill us. I mean, like 9/11, for instance. I'm sure all the listeners out there know that this was some sort of corrupt job, the way the towers went down.
It was a tool called problem, reaction, solution. You say to the people, if I want to put security cameras on every street, I want to monitor all what you're doing inside your house and outside, all your business. You'd say straight away, no, we don't want that. We won't be accepting that.
And the whole idea of an inside job just promotes that.
Yeah. Well, any tin pot dictator or anyone with a common sense knows that was an inside job. You've heard all of the people around the world speak up about it. Because the wound was so close, it was very difficult to approach yourselves in America about it. It was very hurtful and harmful, and it put you all in a big shock.
It let them get away with the resource wars, and it made the public an enemy of the government. So they could turn around and say, you people are potentially terrorists because, look, this was domestic.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened at the federal building, the Murrah Federal Building.
Yeah,
it was domestic terrorism. And that's how it was sold.
Terrorism to America was through, Clinton's policy, which was to start talking about internal terrorism and terrorism possibly coming to America. And then you had the P.J. Morrow building attack. They used the children in the basement as the furnace that we would all be outraged and let's do something about it.
Well, the fertilizer bomb story was totally made up. And the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, were the folks who studied that and the crater it left behind and said the Murrah building was nuked. And similarly, 9/11, nuked.
Well, it was very similar. That's right. It had, like the World Trade Center had 47 steel columns each. The J.P. Morrow building had its own steel columns, and it was breached from inside out. That's what they said. It wasn't from the outside in from a rider truck. It was actually inside the building. And I think that was Brigadier something, but he was a British sort of military bombs expert, and he went out there and investigated it and came to that conclusion.
You remember after 9/11, there was a brief interview with the owner of Tower 7 that he said he had to pull it, which is a demolition term for knocking it down. And I thought that was a really startling statement by him admitting that they had to demolish it. Now, to prepare a demolition, you have to prepare long in advance, which actually is we're going to change gears. When we come back, we're going to have 2 guests. Everybody stand by. We're going to go to alien abduction. We hope you enjoyed this lovely talk, but we'll be right back with Johnny Webb, Laura Lee, and me, Dr. J.
Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
Enjoy your
extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another?
Extra big-ass fries.
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
trouble.
trouble.
Come on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
You have a choice, whether to be a madman or a bold genius. What's the difference? A madman is somebody who does the same action over and over and over for an unknown destiny. A bold genius is somebody who does the same action over and over and over again for a known destiny. That is why fortune always favors the bold. True titans of our times and of the past, who are bent on making most of their opportunities in life, are too busy to bother with luck. Luck is the good fortune you determine for yourself. So find the strength, have the knowledge, summon up the courage to accomplish and see that your dreams are limitless. Your dreams are the fabric that binds all of us together. Rise up like fire. Ascend the ladder of your dreams. We choose to rise, not fall. We choose to live, not die. Shift to your triumph. Today, you shift to your triumph and carry your dreams forward until your life is a capital of triumph. I believe in you, and I know you can do whatever you want. You have an unlimited potential. This moment, this second, your life is an Olympian sunrise. This is your time.
This is your time. Right here at revolutionradio.com. To rise up and make the difference. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Listener supported 100%.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
downloaded to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back. As you heard it from the man himself, Nighthawk, that this is Revolution Radio, the world's number one listener-supported station. That means we need your help to continue the free flow of ideas and stay out of corporate hands. Go to freedomslips.com and hit the support button now. And there's 3 tiers that you could also not only help the station, that'll also benefit you. For $5 a month, you'll be getting access to all the show's archives. Again, just mention it when you hit the support button. For $30, you'll get an entire year's worth of shows on DVD to do whatever you want with. For $100, you'll get the mother of all seed packs, 54 varieties, 34,000 plus seeds, good for up to 25 years, all non-GMO, and so much more. Everything is available at that website, freedomslips.com, and the most important button is the support button. And now we welcome you back to Researchers on a Mission Radio. I'm your host, Dr. J. Co-hosting with me straight from Texas is Laura Lee Solomon. And across the pond, we have Johnny Webb. This hour, we're changing gears, and we are going to be speaking about alien abduction. Joining us for the first time, someone who's finally got inspired to come forward and tell his story is Jay Lucas. Jay, welcome to the show.
Dr. J, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everyone taking the time to tune in today. And I'm looking forward to being a contribution to everyone that's listening.
Oh, is it an absolute pleasure to have you on. Now, tell us, what inspired you to finally come out and tell your story?
Well, again, the intention is just sharing story with the world, and I feel there's a lot of listeners out there that have had their own experiences and different anomalies, and experiencing this through a lifelong experience. I know that there's times of great confusion. It could be very paralyzing in a lot of ways, and you really feel like you're on an island by yourself. And as you come to find out, you're not so alone as you think. And by speaking and having a voice, the intention is to empower those that have had those experiences. Just talking about it could be very healing, and even me speaking to you guys today would be very healing for me. And also, there's different meetup groups, and there are resources out there that could help aid these individuals and gain some clarity, so they can move on with their lives and understand what's happening to them, and understand that there's nothing wrong with them. And that's what I choose to explore today.
So tell us, when did you first realize that you were an experiencer? And okay, when we hear from Yvonne Smith and all the other world's most renowned hypnotherapist, Kathleen Martin, another one is Barbara Lamb, all of them say, and even before he passed away, Bud Hopkins, and of course Dr. David Jacobs, that the number one prerequisite of being abducted is that your family is abducted. Do you think it goes to your family? Do you think your family was possibly taken, or do you think this is fairly recent and it started with you? When did you realize that you were taken?
I believe it started with me, but there are individuals in the family that kind of have an innate interest in extraterrestrials, metaphysics. Not too open to speak about it, but the first experience that I was aware of, I was roughly 5 years old, and the experience was, I was asleep, and my bedroom was the very end of the house. I shared a room with my baby sister at the time, and I know a lot of abductees, have the idea of the voice in the head or anything related to that. My experience was fairly different. I wouldn't say it was a voice per se. It was just a knowingness And for whatever reason, I woke up really early in the morning, and something just kind of called me to go outside. And, so I put my shoes on, my jacket, and I was standing out in my backyard. And not more than a few minutes went by, still unsure why I was even outside, and also in fear of getting in trouble. But what I noticed is kind of a light from this vantage point to southeast. And what was interesting is it wasn't a craft per se. It was more or less a silhouette. It was light energy. Couldn't make out a face. The only thing that I could detect at the time was larger eyes. Almost, to me, as a child, would be insect looking. And this silhouette slowly came down from the horizon, and everything kind of went still. And the next I remember after that, I was in my bed, fully clothed, shoes on. I was reversed in my bed, meaning my feet were where my head were normally be, and vice versa. Another thing I noticed is the bed I was in, normally I slept, or the bed was situated against the wall. And I woke up in my bed and placed directly in the middle of the room. And I woke up in terror, screaming on the top of my lungs. And my parents attended to me at that time. And what I noticed shortly after that was somehow I developed a clairvoyance, visually and in my mind's eye, a claircognizance and a clairsentience to energies. But also I noticed was I became intensely empathic to where, whether at school or walking through a crowd, I was somehow able to feel emotions of others, even pick up on thoughts, per se. And that came literally out of the blue, and it was hard to understand what that was, and not something I could really talk about. And then a lot of paranormal experiences, followed, thereafter. I was the weird kid at sleepovers where I would, one instance, I would stay at my friend Timothy's home, and every time I would go over there, the family room television would switch on and off, on and off, on and off. And we'd also play with like action figures, and they would start moving by themselves across the floor. And oddly enough, these experiences only happened when I came around. So at that point, I knew that there was something of concern. Obviously, I would share with my parents, and you're often labeled as being creative or having an extraordinary imagination. But I know deep down that experience was probably more real than anything I've experienced ever. And that experience followed me through life, and I would get it in daydreams. I would get it in dreams, very lucidly. So it was almost like it was imprinted as a reminder somehow. But that experience was clearly real. And then that followed, many other paranormal experiences of life. And then things, as far as the ET experience, has kind of dissipated and kind of revamped itself back in my middle 20s, roughly 25 years old. I'm being 31 currently. And that's when things really started to take form. And now, being older, I could recount more, remember more, so to speak. And they still continue even more intensely to this current time.
Was that the last memory? Do you have any recent memories other than dreams that you've had that keep reminding you of this? I mean, when was the last time you think you were taken?
Well, that was the first memory. Physically taken, I mean, I've had other experiences to where I was with my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, And it was important for me to share my experience with anyone I would commit to, because I had to be open and upfront about it. And we were actually in our condo overlooking a lake, and there was a large 8x12 window. And as I was explaining to her some of my stories, we were both drawn to the window that overlooked the lake, and we saw this craft, and then it shot up into the atmosphere. The experience had to be not more than a few seconds. And that kind of gave validation in her, validation that, what I was saying was indeed true. And then we had an experience when I was visiting my mother, and it was late at night, and we had a noise machine on. I have a hard time sleeping in silence. I have to have a fan on or a light on or something in that nature. And there was interference in the noise machine, kind of like a loud crackling. And we were instantly drawn to the window, and we saw these 3 large light beams shoot across the window. 1, 2, 3. And she held on to me as tight as she could, kept repeating in her mind, don't take them, don't take them, don't take them. And me, on the other end, I was feeling the same way. I don't know for sure if I was that night. Definitely another experience to where, it felt so real. And that continued to happen. A month after that, we were vacationing in Fort Lauderdale, and it was in the evening, and we were just overlooking the balcony we had was overlooking the ocean. And we noticed these they were large as craft, but they would be more orbs. And one would appear in front of, in distance, maybe a couple miles in distance, and it would shoot a beam of white light, and you'd even see the reflection off the ocean hitting me directly on the balcony. Didn't have too many sensations. It was more of a warm feeling. And we counted roughly 11 that would shoot the energy. Another one would leave. Another orb would come to the exact place, beam of light, and so on and so forth. And I tried to find very different outlets to, even though experiencing that, I needed confirmation. So I would visit with well-known psychics, Akashic record readers, and I was told that for sure that I've been taken 3 times, but this is also something, according to them, that has happened many lifetimes. So this is a kind of a past life experience that keeps repeating itself. But I still need something more at that point. So I was introduced to I was introduced to Yvonne, and she introduced me to a MUFON hypnotherapist. And this was done recently because what stemmed that was there's times I wake up between 3 and 4 in the morning completely sore. The way I would describe it is, if any athletes are out there, if you ever play football, the 2-day practices where you're just sore from head to bottom. And I noticed when I wake up, I would have like this orange, I would say kind of like a rash. And it was very hot. And I looked down and I saw these huge handprints on my chest and arms. I've actually, this is the same, what I'm speaking of is what I shared with you previously, and you're welcome to display that if you're interested. That projected me to seek further clarity in having a hypnosis session.
What did you uncover in your hypnosis session, your regressions?
The subconscious mind is very powerful. For example, if I asked you, Dr. J, what you had for dinner 3 Wednesdays ago, you probably couldn't tell me. Subconscious mind would tell you exactly what you had and what time you had it. And my experience was, it took me about a good half hour to get under. It's almost like there was like a implant almost blocking the experience. But more or less, reliving the situation, I was on a metallic table. The whole room was metallic. And they asked me, the hypnosis guided me through it, look around. And I was in a state of paralysis where I couldn't look to the left, I couldn't look up, I could only look to the right and at my arm. And when I couldn't depict the face of this being, all I know is that It was a feminine energy. She had blue skin and light hair. And she kept telling me, don't worry, you're safe. Don't worry, you're safe. I kept trying to push through. And the hypnotherapist was guiding me why I was there. And according to what came up through hypnosis was whatever beings these were, there was something wrong with their children. And they're utilizing me for energy, DNA, and blood. For whatever reason, to be some type of contribution to, their race. I was then propped up. I couldn't stand on my own, but they did show me what I said in hypnosis, Gaia, kind of advising me that, Mother Earth, so to speak, is in very much despair and in a lot of pain. It's a living organism just like we are. And, they thanked me, and also on the table, they shot me with energy on top of my body and above my head. And although it was frightening, it was very relaxing. I felt at ease. It was warm. I felt a lot of love. And I had a definite familiarity with the feminine energy that was holding my hand. And I don't know how, but it felt very much like how you'd feel around a family member. It was familiar.
Do you recall this memory being on board of a ship, or was this in your house?
It had to be on the ship, considering that I was a metallic table and the room itself was metallic, and then later it came out through regression as me being propped up in a room, kind of looking at Earth. So that was enough verification for me that I was indeed not in my house. I wasn't on a plane. I wasn't at a base. I was definitely in the atmosphere of Earth.
Did you, by any chance, do you recall what that ship looked like, or do you just have a memory of being inside and meeting this being?
The memory was just being on the table, being paralyzed, and having experience with the being, and then later on in the experience being propped up and being educated of what my purpose was. To the right, I did see other entities. I just saw them very busy. It was really hard to make out exactly what they were. All I could say is they were very small in stature, smaller than myself, half my size, more or less.
Typical grays, pretty much. And a lot of people speculate that these grays are used by multiple species, if not all of them, as sort of bio-robots to do their little dirty work. They're not the ones in charge. They're just the ones that go get you and act as the sentries and so on and so forth. But once you get beyond that is when you find out who's in charge. It sounds to me like that blue feminine being that you were dealing with that showed you the love from that you felt from a family member was the one really in charge. What purpose do they give you? Because it seems to us from all these different experiences we've interviewed and from all these abduction specialists that we've interviewed, each one is given a purpose. For instance, Jim Sparks is to save the rainforests. Someone else is to calm people when they come. Do you remember? Did you get as far in your regression as to find out what your mission is going to be?
We're really pushing through. What did come up is they used the language of chosen, a chosen one.
Our children or their children?
That was more directed towards me. And what I got out of that is that somehow their children there's something wrong with them. They're ill. And they needed to utilize me and my energy and blood and DNA to somehow assist their race of children. So that was, according to them, my main intention for these experiences that have happened over time.
Well, Jay, we got about anywhere from 3 minutes to 5 minutes before this quarter ends, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell everybody out there. We're glad that you came forward because each person that comes forward as a new experiencer and tells their story inspires others. I remember we did first documentary with Dr. Lear, 3 people came forward and told their story. That inspired 9 more others that came out in the following 2 movies. And I'm sure you, by finally speaking for the first time out publicly, is going to do the exact same thing. What would you tell all the listeners out there who may be experiencers but are too afraid to tell their story?
You know, that's the purpose, is to kind of step out and trust me, this wasn't an easy decision. This is something that I had to contemplate for many hours. And I felt that it could stir up a domino effect. And it was just to let others know, to help get them clarification. And I know there's a lot of people that have experienced this very similar, whether it's positive or negative. But the weight that came off me by speaking, to you and to your audience today is incredibly healing. And I feel that a lot can be released for these individuals. And there are support systems out there, and there are tools to gain clarity, whether that's hypnosis or seeing a psychic medium. But I think a lot of them are not sure, but they know just deep down that these experiences are happening, and just empower them to have a voice, because nothing's going to change in this paradigm unless we all stand together rather than stand alone. And it's good just to talk about it. And that alone could do wonders for these individuals. And it's okay to talk. You don't need to go tell the world. You can trust it with someone else that has experiences, and anyone that wants to share. I'm more than willing to talk it out with others. But I feel it's very empowering.
Well, that brings us to our break. Jay, thank you so much for your story. Everybody stay tuned for Travis Walton.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
I gotta know the truth, Charlie.
This is Stu Webb, federal whistleblower, the new host of Veterans Today Radio News Reports, Monday right here on Revolution Radio. My guests are writers and contributors to VeteransToday.com, the #1 alternative media magazine in the world and the true voice of the world's clandestine community. We will be discussing recent articles that deal with government corruption, politics, military, Illuminati, and world events that affect your lives and what you can do to change the direction of America. So tune in to the Veterans Today radio news reports every Monday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Studio B here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Thank you.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Hey folks, Captain Nighthawk here. Do you have a favorite host? Well, imagine if you will having all the broadcast shows from 2013 to listen to anytime you want. Awesome deal, huh? Anyway, so stop by freedomslips.com and order the entire 2013 library of your favorite host for just $30. Not only do you help with the station funding to keep us on the air, you also help the host because they get half of the net on every order. Also, we have Revolution Radio's all-time favorite shows all on one disc. The details are really broad, so you'll have to visit the website and go look at the details yourself. It's, again, www.freedomslips.com/season2013.htm. And get your favorites. First come, first serve, 7 to 21 days for delivery. Thank you. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps, including me. Later.
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all!
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back to Researchers on a Mission Radio, ROAM, Rome Radio. I'm your host, Dr. J. Co-hosting for me is Laura Lee Solomon. And now we bring you the special treat that we've been talking about for the first hour and a half. The event, the Skyfire Summit, the man who's putting it on himself, the star of the movie that was based on him, Fire in the Sky, the actual person, is joining us here, the one and only Travis Walton. Travis, welcome to the show.
Wow. That's a hard act to follow, my intro.
Well, I know you said this multiple times, but November 5th, 1975. Just give us a brief, quick 2-3 minute rundown of that date.
Well, I was part of a 7-man crew cutting trees in the forest, remote area in Arizona, and we were headed home, saw an object hovering near the road. I got out to take a closer look and was injured and taken aboard. And my coworkers were accused of murdering me and making up a story to cover up for it. So state police lie detector tests proved they were telling the truth.
And now, 39 years later, on the exact date, is the kickoff of your event, which is one of the premier events in the United States with a lineup that people literally are flying from around the U.S. and some out of the U.S. to come for it. Let's start talking about that a little bit. Skyfire Summit, beginning 39 years to the day you were taken. You are doing a Skywatch that first night, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, we were supposed to have a 20-person cutoff because, space will be limited for it, but I wasn't paying attention, and so we're going to wind up with more than twice that. We're going to somehow try to cope with the numbers. But, it's really going to be... Actually, I'm a little bit nervous about doing this. This will be the first time I've gone back to the site at night on the anniversary, so... but I'll have lots of company.
That's what I was going to say. You're going to have supporters with you this time around. Well, anyhow, so that's November 5th, 2014, and that falls on a Wednesday. Your event goes from November 5th to November 9th, which is the Sunday. And then, of course, the speakers start on that Friday, which is the 7th, and then the 8th and 9th. And you've got a killer lineup. I mean, we have the godfather of ufology, Stanton Friedman. We have the man who's uncovered more Roswell witnesses, Don Schmidt. Richard Dolan, the very popular ufologist who was recently interviewed by me the other day. Of course, Tom Reed, who was interviewed back when J. Allen Hynek was still doing Project Blue Book, and his case was very well popular, very well known. And Linda Moulton Howe, which everybody loves her, and more. Why don't you tell us a little bit about these speakers, why you chose them, and what they're going to be presenting, and why people need to come to this event versus why they're not going to get this experience anywhere else. Because not only are they going to the location where this happened to you, they're going to actually get a chance to have an intimate lectures with these people and have to meet their heroes in ufology.
Yeah, and those people who attend the bank will actually get this, sit at the table and have a meal with them and talk to them one-on-one.
Well,
but we don't want to forget Peter Robbins. He's going to be talking about the Rendlesham Forest incident, and that's happened over there in England, a very dramatic multi-witness thing at a military installation. And then Ben Hansen, he's the Sci-Fi Channel's host of Fact or Fake, and he is conducting the Skywatch. He's got telescopic night vision equipment, so it's going to be a first-class Skywatch. But his talk is about, as a former FBI agent, he's talking about investigative protocols and techniques about, how to determine which are the best cases, sort of thing.
Now, what made you decide to? Obviously, we got a diverse group, and I'm glad you mentioned Peter Robbins. That almost slipped my mind. He wrote an amazing book, Left at Eastgate, which, like you said, is about the Rendlesham Forest incident, where a craft over a 2 nights in a row landed, and it was witnessed by the on-base colonel as well as scores of other military witnesses, several who've come forward and testified, others who are still fearful. But point being is you've got an array of people that literally some of the top ufologists, and you've assembled them all in one location at one time.
Yeah, we've got Jim Delatoso speaking on the Phoenix Lights, and Kathy Martin is talking about her aunt, Betty Hill's incident. And then there's, Tracy Torme, who was a screenwriter on the movie.
And Tracy Torme, as a matter of fact, he's also working on a current movie, 701, and I know a lot of people are eager to see that. He not only produced Fire in the Sky, which was based on you, and I think that when I heard an interview with him years ago, he wasn't even fully convinced of the fact that there was. He wasn't convinced that Roswell happened quite yet. He said that even though Colonel Halt's memo was out there, according to him, when he was speaking to George Norrie, he couldn't quite hear him. But he couldn't quite comprehend.
You know who convinced me of Roswell? The government. About the fourth or fifth explanation, that kind of gives me a clue that there's something to it. You don't need 4 or 5 explanations for something that is nothing but a weather balloon. But let's not forget Chris O'Brien. He's going to be talking about the ancient astronaut stuff. And, I've got, a couple of...
Who else?
Well, I don't know if I should talk about that. I've got some guests that are nationally known musicians, but until I'm sure they're on the plane, I'm not going to talk about that. But we're going to have some interesting... fun that way, but we're at least got a fire pit going, and a lot of people are bringing guitars, and in the evening we'll be sitting under the stars and jamming. So, but we have a second Skywatch. See, we have the first one on the 5th, and that's all booked up. But a second one, is fairly unlimited in the how many people we can handle there, and that's going to be on Saturday night. So that should be interesting too.
And people definitely need to get on this because last I checked, hotels were actually being sold out in the vicinity. There's plenty available in the nearby towns. We might as well tell everybody where they can find this information. Skyfiresummit.com. Again, skyfiresummit.com. Now, if the speakers themselves wasn't an incentive enough, seeing where you were actually taken is a whole other story. And that's everybody who's seen the movie throughout the world has always wanted to know what it was like to actually be in those woods, to see those trees, to see the vantage point of what you were actually looking at. And now you're providing people this opportunity to where they actually get to do that. What gave you the idea to do this on this year, per se, versus last year or the following year?
Well, I just had, some friends that just kept pushing at me and trying to get me to do it. I kind of just blew it off for quite a while, and I was finally persuaded to do it, and so here we are.
Well, we are absolutely glad you are doing it, because you are one of the most famous, definitely by far the most famous cases on this. You broke the taboo of the world when Fire in the Sky came out. When that movie came out, I remember seeing in the theater, everybody came out scared, and even skeptics started thinking, like, wait a minute, even though Hollywood did their little, Hollywoodizing of the film by adding elements and leaving things with a doubt, your friends were accused of murder. And at the same time, these ETs did not leave you in the forest where they were taken. They left you near a road in a nearby town to make sure you were safe. So obviously, and there's no footprints, you didn't wander off, you didn't walk off. There's all these, so much evidence, and the movie doesn't even portray what's in your book. And that's...
Oh, yeah. Well, the sheriff said that they brought in the tracking dog team from the state prison, and so these dogs were, a kind of, animal that can find a trail if it's there. And the trail led from the truck to the center of the clearing, and that was it.
And exactly. And dogs, we know, I've seen this one story where this bloodhound was looking for this child, and the police officers were using this bloodhound, and they were traveling on the side of the road, and on the freeway, actually. And the bloodhound would pick up the scent, I guess because of the skin particles would be falling out through the exhaust. And when it hit the exit, which was about 50 miles later, the bloodhound turned its head and faced the car, and basically gave the indication to get out of the police car and let's go that way. And they ultimately found this little girl that was gone missing. Now, if a bloodhound, which is what they used to come find you, could not find any trace of you other than the place that you were last seen, that alone is an anomaly. But for them to go on and accuse your friends of murder, they really didn't want to believe this. I just don't understand. But now we have so many people that are believing this. Everybody who's under the age of 18 or under, was born after extraterrestrial planets existed. Anybody...
critics say that a polygraph test isn't 100%. But, way back, the president of the American Polygraph Association, in reference to this case, said that the odds were over 1,000,000 to 1 of there being a mistake when you've got 6, 7 people passing on the same issue. And, that was back when there was only 6 people. But now there's been 16 past tests on the same incident.
And what are the chances of that? It's got to be so astronomical that it's never happened. You probably are the only person on Earth who's had such a case with these witnesses that have gone through these polygraphs and have had the same result on all of them. That even the most hardcore skeptics have to have in their minds at least some shred of like their belief system being destroyed and waking up that, wait a minute, we are not alone. Now, we are excited that you're putting this event on because we believe that this is finally going to wake more people up. Each time an event like this happens, each time a radio show like this occurs, each time someone such as yourself speaks, the person before you spoke because he was inspired by people such as yourself who told their story. If it wasn't for people telling their story of being taken, or people such as Yvonne Smith holding zero support groups where people can go and deal with the post-traumatic stress syndrome, there wouldn't be enough people out there to acknowledge what's going on. But now the amount of people that's been taken is so high up there that you can't deny it. And
but the situation is entirely different now. Back when this happened, they didn't have groups like Yvonne's support group, and there's a few of those around the country, and the evidence that's coming in from astronomers about life on other worlds is far, far greater than it was back then.
I definitely agree, and I think this is why we are reaching a cusp in ufology and as the world. I think it's just that the percentage of the people on this globe that believe that we have been visited is much higher than it was 10 years ago, which was much higher than it was 20 years ago, which is way higher than it was 40 years ago. Let's go back to the speakers that are going to be at your event. Tell us, let's go one by one through the names. We mentioned Peter Robbins. Tell us why.
Well, first of all, let me describe what I wanted here was to kind of give a foundation course, a kind of a ufology 101, sort of the basics of the field, So the speakers were chosen on that basis, and then the topics that they were asked to speak about. Because, some of these people could talk about other subjects, but the ones that they're choosing, play into this concept that I'm trying to present to the local and the regional people, the media around here, to sort of kick off this annual conference. Stanton Friedman is excellent on speaking about the scientific basis for it. He's a nuclear physicist, so he's capable of citing the facts, and he's debated the skeptics on the media, and he wins the debates. He kicks their behinds because he does his homework.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we actually had a debate with Stanton Friedman and Robert Schaefer right here about 6 to 9 months ago, and all the listeners conclusively agreed that Robert Schaefer had no ground to stand on. With everything he tried to shoot down of Stanton Friedman, he was way far off. So I'm glad you brought him, because he's definitely going to describe what's going on scientifically, his background. We call him the Godfather for a reason. He's the only person that's still alive that testified in 1969 at the congressional hearing. He's been doing this for 55 years. And then, of course, we mentioned Peter Robbins, who's going to talk about a really important case, the Rendlesham Landing, where in 1980, December 1980, in a joint U.S.-UK military base, more than likely stocking nuclear weapons, craft was being seen there twice, and it landed. And some people say beings interacted with it, others don't. But nonetheless,
Peter's research of this subject on this case is exhaustive. I mean, he's written a book on the subject, so he knows the facts inside and out. And, of course, there's always the real facts, and then there's the rumors and things that get said. So, he's here to set the record straight on that. But Richard Dolan, he's written books about his topic, which is government secrecy and the government cover-up angle. Richard Dolan is actually a university-trained historian. That was his degree. So he's, academically qualified to be speaking on the subject.
Absolutely.
Then Linda Howe, she was a television journalist. I mean, she was a recognized professional before, she got into these other subjects.
You're right. And one thing I love about Linda is every time I see her lecture, she's always got something new. She's always finding new stuff that's happening. Her lecture 3 months ago is different than it was 6 months ago versus a year ago, because she's a journalist, just like you said. That's exactly what she did prior to getting into ufology. And I think she stumbled upon this by accident. And when she did, we are all grateful because we are getting amazing news from her. So like you said, you're putting together a UFO 101 course by bringing these diverse people. Let's go on with more guests. Don Schmidt. All these people you mentioned, except Peter Robbins so far, we've had on this show, and all of them have, in their own unique way, have contributed to this field immensely. And by bringing them all together, this is truly going to be a revolutionary time. Don Schmidt, I loved it when he said, when he was on air here 2 months ago, he said that there was 4 explanations for Roswell. 1, flying saucer crash recovered by Army. 2, weather balloon. 3, which was in 1994, the U.S. Air Force said that it was Project Mogul. And then, of course, 3 years later, to explain the bodies, the 4th explanation was that they were crash test dummies, and that they were the people's memories were flawed because the crash test dummies were in the 50s, even though this happened in 47. Of all 4 explanations...
Well, what about the 5th explanation, that these were some kind of Nazi or Russian, some kind of test creatures, young babies, or some kind of a theory like that would explain smaller bodies. So I don't know. There's probably more explanations than that. But John Schmidt, actually he was a consultant to Dr. Hynek on Project Blue Book, and back in those days he was pretty skeptical. As a matter of fact, that's how he came into Roswell. And by being an honest researcher, he discovered he was persuaded.
And one thing I love about him is what he said, that this makes so much sense, and is so, if people don't realize the implication of what he said, of all those explanations that were given to us by the government, only one has witnesses, only one of them, and that's the first one. And to date, there have been over 600 witnesses that have come forward to speak about the fact that what happened was a crashed flying saucer. Actually, as a matter of fact, most people have made the consensus that has been two. And like you said, him, such as J. Allen Hynek. J. Allen Hynek was famous for giving us the swamp gas explanation, but yet he turned around to become one of the premier people talking about believing that these things are real, that we are being visited and we have been visited throughout history. And let's go on with the next guest, Tracy Torme. What made him change his mind and finally decided to produce a major blockbuster movie starring Robert Patrick and D.B. Sweeney, who played Jew? Robert Patrick at the time was a big hit because he had just played in the Terminator 2 movie. And I remember that was one of the reasons I wanted to see him, because I was a big fan of Terminator 2 at the time. Of course, the story I was in love with because I was huge into UFOs even at that time. But, let's go. What does he bring to the table to diversify this UFO 101 event?
Well, he's actually justifiably needing to explain some of what happened of why the Fire in the Sky movie went, astray from sticking strictly to the facts, It was something that he fought for unsuccessfuri, and he was just overruled by other people that had more power in the thing. And it was basically given the option, we're going to make these changes, and there's not going to be a movie. And in his shoes, I probably would have opted for the same sort of thing, but it was certainly a bitter pill to swallow for me and him.
And everybody else that you have is amazing. Like we said, Tom Reed, it was taken, I believe, in 1967, right? 2 years before.
It's a lifelong sort of a thing. From the time he and his brother, it's kind of a whole family that's been involved in this. But there's all kinds of physical evidence and lie detector stuff, and some major political figures involved. The UN. It's quite a case that. It's not a new case, but it's just now getting the kind of attention it should have had all along.
And his father was also a mayor as well, too, and subsequently died. And we're not sure if it was related to this. It's possible because it was an abrupt death, but it was a very scary thought. And the fact that this made it to the UN but never went further than that shows that this case had relevance, and we're glad you brought him on. Now, Kathleen Marden, Betty Hill's niece, she was a great, sweet woman. We've had her here several times, and every time she talks about her latest book, Alien Abduction, I want to say, is it Diaries, Alien Abduction Diaries, or Alien Abduction? It was a book on several different abductions, and there were so many correlations among them. And she is definitely one of the premier ufologists in the abduction realm, where she is now a hypnotherapist, and she's regressing people on her own. And if I'm not mistaken, she's actually holding support groups herself too. Why did you choose her to bring her to add to this group, to add to the circle?
That's just one of the pioneering cases that had the kind of evidence and kind of examination and sort of brought the subject to national attention. But you were talking about her finding parallels in different cases, and it's kind of remarkable. I could give an entire lecture just about the incredible, unlikely coincidences that have happened with my case. And for one thing, my incident happened here in the White Mountains of Arizona, and Betty Hill's case happened in the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
Exactly, and they were both 15 years, or was it 13 years apart? Hers was 61, yours was 75, so 14 years apart. Both of them were in somewhat desolate areas, and they seem to be the same creatures. Now, even though that case was the one that first came forward, it's highly doubtful that this is the first time they've been taken. And when Dr. David Jacobs was on, he was saying that he was able to track it back to 1880, and he would probably be able to go back even further had he been able to speak to more people who's had heard stories from their great-grandparents and so on and so forth. Now, we only have a few more minutes left, so I want to talk about a couple of the other guests, and then I want you to give a message to everybody out there of why it's important. I'm going to be there. All you listeners out there, you do not want to miss this opportunity. This is going to be a true intimate event with the top ufologists. You just heard it right now. All these people you said are the top ufologists. Ben Hansen, I've been with him at the Skywatches at the UFO Congress. He's got the most spectacular equipment that he uses for these Skywatches. Jim Teletoso, we didn't really mention him. Phoenix Lights, 1997. He was very popular in the 90s on TV all over the place, and he was very popular with digital imaging. What is he going to be talking to people about?
Phoenix Lights, and I think that's very relevant because that's, an Arizona incident. And he's got some very detailed photo and computer analysis that, he was a major figure at Village Labs for a long time. And so, you'll see that he's really got the technical expertise to, provide the evidence that Phoenix Lights was not any of the several official explanations that always come out to try to explain these things away. But our Native American speakers is really fascinating to me because, I spoke here a while back to almost 1,000 Native Americans on the reservation. And to hear the stories about what happened in the far reaches of that real desolate country out there is kind of amazing because they've been kind of closed mouth. It's traditionally something they don't openly talk about. But this one guy spoke about his grandmother had this rug that was woven that depicted a scene of meeting with these beings. And, that's just, that would be amazing to see that.
And this is going to show our history. Travis, 15 seconds. Tell everybody where to find you, where to find this event, and again, the date.
www.skyfiresummit.com. Take a look at that website, and some interesting videos on there too. I've got a really great web user that's making really nice, great footage. And
November 5th through November 9th, skyfiresummit.com. Everybody, be there, be square.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
You have a choice whether to be a madman or a bold genius. What's the difference? A madman is somebody who does the same action over and over and over for an unknown destiny. A bold genius is somebody who does the same action over and over and over again for a known destiny. That is why fortune always favors the bold. True titans of our times and of the past, who are bent on making most of their opportunities in life, are too busy to bother with luck. Luck is the good fortune you determine for yourself. So find the strength, have the knowledge, summon up the courage.